Welcome back to the Writer's Room. This is Let's Write, the podcast where we pitch, develop, and write some dream movie ideas based on our favorite IPs. I'm Ryan Matsunaga, and joining me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Julian Rose.
How about we try Shogun Jazz?
Shogun Jazz.
Sneaky.
That's an interesting twist because that's not really an adjective. I guess not in the typical sense. But I like that you're shaking it up. New year, new jazz.
Yeah, just trying different jazzes.
This is our first episode of 2021. You'll excuse us if we're at least a little bit rusty on the pitch front, at least, because I know it doesn't seem like that long because we've been actively working on stuff, but it's actually been over a month now since we've done one of these pitch room type shows. And the reason for that is last month going into December, we were very focused on our annual project, which is a development, brainstorming, and eventually writing and publishing of a TV script. And last year's in particular was a whole other animal because instead of collaborating on a single script like we had done previous 2 years, this year we actually undertook solo projects to some extent, at least. We developed them together, but we each individually wrote our own script, which was definitely its own interesting challenge.
Yeah, that was daunting, and I don't want to rehash too much of what I said in our postmortem, but it was daunting and very difficult, but very, very rewarding. And I think what I had touched on a little bit was just how awesome of a feeling it was to feel like I sat there and just like slammed my head against a wall for like several days straight, and then on a final day, or not a final day, but kind of after several of those days, having a breakthrough day and having the writing just flow really well was such a cool experience. So very rewarding project, but very difficult for sure.
Absolutely. And if you'd like to check out the fruits of that, or if you're joining us for the first time on this episode, all of the podcast episodes from that series are currently live on the feed, as well as the actual scripts themselves, which are available to download on our website. And if you'll be at least a little bit gentle with us, we'd definitely love to hear your thoughts on them. I think we worked very hard on them, and I think we're at least fairly proud of the results that came out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, it was my first like solo completed script, so that was really cool, and I was really proud of that accomplishment. But absolutely, yeah, would love to hear if you guys check them out. Would love to hear feedback, and feel free to hit us up on social at Let's Write Pod everywhere, and let us know what you think and how we can improve and do better for the next Nano.
Great, and we have a bunch of projects in that sort of vein coming up on the horizon, which we'll get more into as the year progresses. But for now, without any further ado, we'll jump into the main programming of the show, which is another session of pitching. You ready to go, Julian?
I'm ready. Pitching 2021.
All right. This is the first one of 2021. So if you screw this up, the entire year is ruined. We're going to have to reconvene in 2022.
God.
Are you prepared to take on that burden, that incredible task ahead of you?
This is reminding me of when when our first movie of 2020 that we watched together was Cats in theaters, and how it kind of just set the tone for the rest of the year. So this feels like it has the potential to be something momentous like that in either a good or bad way. But I accept the burden.
So you need to reach for the standards of Cats 2019, or this whole show is for naught.
Okay, let's do it. I accept.
Let's boot up our patented movie generating idea algorithm 19,004.7.
5G.
Boop, 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 boop. All right, Julian. I'm not going to say this is a softball, but this is... I'm expecting some great things out of this one.
I think
we can knock this one out of the park.
Don't say that. Right. Don't set it up like that.
The algorithm is telling us that it's time for a new direction for the James Bond franchise.
Ooh.
So we need to figure out some kind of way to soft reboot the James Bond franchise, but we also need to stir the audience up. We need to give them a little bit of energy. We need to justify the reason why we're remixing this franchise. And so if you could give it a huge plot twist or some kind of twist ending, just something to get people talking as they're leaving that theater, I think we're going to be in a great spot to reboot and revitalize the James Bond franchise. Any ideas percolating off of that? Anything feel interesting or intriguing?
Okay, so reboot the Bond franchise, freshen it up, and with the stipulation that there has to be a major plot twist.
Some kind of big plot twist or a twist ending. And the algorithm is specifically telling us a soft reboot. So if there's a way to do that, as opposed to just a full on reboot, which I guess considering it's James Bond, I suppose every so often with the new actors, it is kind of a full reboot. So maybe we're looking for something that has some connective tissue with the Craig era. Maybe not necessarily a sequel or a spin-off, but some way for it to feel a little bit like there's some connectivity there.
Ooh, okay, all right. I have two pitches. I have one
Whoa.
that fulfills that what you because I didn't think about the soft pitch angle because my first pitch I think is way more fun, but is a like hard reboot.
All right, let's hit that one first.
But I do have one that has connective tissue that more fits that soft reboot bill. So which one do
Okay.
you want first?
Let's go with the hard reboot first, and then see what the we'll ease our way into the softness.
Okay, wise choice because this one is this I've pitched some fairly batshit crazy things on this show. This is wild. This is out there.
Okay, this is from the show that brought you John Wick versus Freddy Krueger. I think anything's on the table right now.
I mean, I guess we also did bring you Cats too, which was an exceptional pitch, if I do say so.
I believe the title was just Cats with two S's.
Yeah, Cats with two S's. Okay, I don't know. You jury's out. You tell me if you feel like this is zanier than that.
Okay.
So my basic sort of elevator pitch, and then maybe you can help me tease it out a little bit if we feel like we want to dive deeper. But my basic elevator pitch is we so if the Craig Bond series is very much grounded in sort of gritty realism, a la the Bourne franchise, if that was sort of the tonal aesthetic that defined his tenure as Bond, I propose that we go hard opposite. And I want to do Bond in the tonal aesthetic as a period piece of
Whoa.
the Adam West Batman TV series.
Okay.
So I
So
want to
it's like
do like campy, zany, fun Bond. Dastardly villains that maybe literally twirl mustaches, hijinks, and that's the tone and that's the vibe that I want. You get some real handsome looking fellow, and you just have him ham it up to the nth degree. And the twist, which my twist in both pitches is they're adjacent to each other, so they're similar. My twist for this one is that it turns out, I guess if this is a film, it turns out at the end of the movie that all the action that took place was actually it's a fictional film in the Adam West Batman universe that Batman and Robin are watching in the mansion on their day off. This is like a character that exists in that fictional narrative. So it's sort of a metatextual thing, and you're like, oh, that's a character that's their James Bond in that universe. So it would be like a guy who's an actor in their narrative universe playing that character, and they're watching the film. So that's
be really fun.
my wild
I,
pitch.
I like the idea of maybe at that last twist being, maybe it's not even in the film proper. Maybe it's a post or mid credits sort of thing, or maybe it's just the way that the film closes. But to recast the Adam West and Burt role with like some famous comedians, like just put, because the costume is so recognizable, you could put pretty much anyone in there and you'll get what they're going for. But to have someone very famous in those costumes to kind of hammer home like the comedic moment of that, like put Seth Rogen in the Batman suit,
Sure.
Adam S. Batman suit or something. I think that could be very funny.
Sure. And then shoot it very, period aesthetic, like do it on film and like really make it look, I think it'd be funny to have, if you're going to do those modern actors, but have it really look like it was shot like kind of the way, I haven't seen Mank, but from the trailers, like it's very much shot like it looks like it was made during that time,
Sure.
So I think that could be fun. And then throw in your little celebrity cameos. Could be really fun.
Okay, I'm liking that.
It's fun. I think it's fun. I just think a Bond series in that vein would be a really fun bit of counter programming for the current sort of like focus on gritty realism.
And I feel like the one of the the potential hooks there is in a sense that we've had Bonds during that era, the 1960s.
Exactly.
We had some very iconic Bond movies. So in a sense, you're not even really parodying the Adam West Batman series necessarily. You actually get to really directly parody like a golden age of Bond films, and I think from that angle, I really see Bond fans gravitating towards this, even though it's a fairly wild departure from the series. I still think it could be a fun diversion that even Bond fans will get a kick out of, because you can seed a lot of material in there that's going to appeal directly to that core fan base.
Exactly. I see it as kind of like a that Star Trek animated series that they have. Not to say that this would be animated, but the way they have sort of like your serious Star Trek content right now, and then they have that Lower Deck. Is it called Lower Decks or Lower Deck or something? Just kind of like an offshoot thing that gets to play with that franchise in a more fun way is kind of how I see this. Again, not necessarily animated, although I guess it could be animated, but just I like the idea of it being. I guess really you're going for the Roger Moore era and just kind of hamming it up, in that maybe hamming it up a little bit more than, because the Roger Moore films definitely were playing them straight and unintentionally were a little bit funny. Maybe towards the end they sort of leaned into the humor a little bit, but maybe hamming it up a little bit more than that. But you're right, it is very much touching on a part of the franchise that we've steered very, very heavily away from. So I think as a bit of an offshoot thing, it's fun.
Sure, and there's a lot of nostalgia there too, and you don't have to be making fun of it, but playing with it. I think people are going to be, even Bond fans are going to find that very endearing.
Exactly. So I think that could be fun.
Yeah, we don't have to go all the way with the casting, but do you have some idea in mind, if you went this more comedic angle, who might be able to lead that as essentially the successor to the Daniel Craig Bond?
This is kind of funny because I've been for years pitching that the successor to Daniel Craig should be Dan Stevens, and I meant it in like a serious way because I think he could totally pull it off. But actually, I think he is, having seen him in Eurovision, he's got a really great knack for
Absolutely,
for comedy. So I actually really think he could ham it up as that sort of gentleman spy vibe, and he's obviously no stranger to period pieces, having been on Downton Abbey. So I think he kind of fits he has a vibe that feels like it could be from a different time. So I don't actually mind throwing him in there and having him play it up for comedy a little
bit. Dumb question probably, but is Dan Stevens actually English, or does he just use that accent very well in certain movies?
I'm pretty sure he's actually English. I'm almost 99% certain.
Really well then.
Yeah, I think it's fun.
I think you kind of have to cast a UK actor, right? So I think that works perfect. If you want to go with a Dan Stevens type thing, I might be burning that possibility of having him actually be the quote unquote like core Bond, the canon Bond. But if this is the direction the franchise goes, I don't think that's a bad choice at all.
I mean, I'm not super bad at it because I've rejiggered my approach to who I think the next Bond should be, and I'm firmly on the I can't pronounce his name, but the lead in Bridgerton. That's my new like pick for the actual next Bond. So if that was the real Bond and then this was a fun offshoot and Dan Stevens played it up, I'm super cool with that.
Can we get Richard Ayoade in there as some sort of like Q type role?
Oh my God, just have him play Q. That's brilliant. That is nice. Right. A phenomenal Q. I love that.
Cool. All right. So if that was the hard reboot angle, what's the soft one?
Okay, so the soft one I think is perhaps a little less compelling, but if you were going to have it be some sort of connective tissue to the Daniel Craig series, I like the idea that they're sort of presenting. I'm not sure if they've like fully officially confirmed it or it's like mostly confirmed, but the character played by Lashana Lynch in No Time to Die is supposedly the new 007. Again, I don't. It's been rumored for a while, and I've seen things that are like it's officially confirmed, but I haven't seen like a hard confirmation. But let's just assume that's the case in No Time to Die. She's taken over the 007 sort of I don't know what's called, code tag or
code name.
Yeah, code name. Sure, yeah. In as Bond has retired, presumably at the start of the film. So I like the idea that like obviously it's his last film. He's kind of into the sunset or whatever. She fully takes over the 007 tag, and then the next film would be hers. But then the twist at the end being that it's actually all a theme park in Westworld. Like it's a espionage themed Westworld sort of thing, and that she is one of the like park attendees, and that they've set up this fun playground where you can play British spy, and it would be I think it'd be fun to see how that would like impact the whole Bond franchise, but also tee up potentially an interesting season of Westworld.
So in this pitch, just for clarification, is this like a Westworld esque type concept, or are you literally proposing a Westworld James Bond crossover where it's a canonical installment in both franchises?
Correct. Yeah, I'm just going balls to the wall. So
Wow.
it's a franchise crossover.
Huh.
I mean,
Okay, I gotta kind of chew on that one because man, I'm initially so intrigued by that concept. I wonder which of those two franchises kind of takes over, if that makes sense, in the sense of
mhm.
is this a Westworld installment that happens to be featuring James Bond, or is this a James Bond installment that we're pushing the Westworld angle into?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I certainly think it retroactively recontextualizes the entire Daniel Craig uh, saga, uh, which is a bold move. I mean, the algorithm did tell me I had to go kind of big twist to shake things up, so that was my big twist. But yeah, it's a good question. Which one eats the other, sort of?
Interesting. Could I pitch you a spin on that potential
Yeah,
angle?
yeah, shoot.
Have you ever played the game Metal Gear Solid 2?
No, I actually, incidentally, have not played any of the Metal Gear Solids.
Okay, so some minor spoilers for Metal Gear Solid 2. It happens relatively early on in the game, so I don't feel too bad. Earmuffs if you are running behind on this 19-year-old game at this point. But essentially, you start the game as a main character from the first one. So you know that's what you expect, right? It's a sequel. It's the main character. They're running through the section of the game, and then fairly soon into the game, it switches POVs to this completely new character, and essentially you learn in retrospect that the sequence you just played was, um, I guess for lack of a better term, like a VR simulation of it was kind of like a training simulation for this new character to kind of go through the shoes of the classic character as a way to get prepared and ready for their next mission.
Mm.
So what if we kind of had a similar angle in the sense of if we're going for this soft reboot angle, we have a new Bond, and during the course of this film, or maybe very early on in this film, we sort of recontextualize all of the previous Bonds as being kind of like these VR training simulations that this one person has been going through. So that would kind of like, in sort of a cheeky way, retroactively explain why each of them has like a very different tone, and why they stretch over decades, even though they're all supposedly supposed to be James Bond. Like maybe this James Bond identity is the kind of the sort of the name for the training program. Like it's this James Bond training program, and you're going through all of these different missions or whatever, and having graduated from that, whoever this new character is, the actual human character, is now the James Bond agent, the tactical agent who's going to go out into the field.
I'm all aboard that train. That's phenomenal, and I love the way that like you said, retroactively sort of explains the changing of the guard in terms of the actor. That's phenomenal.
Could be cheap. I think there's some potential blowback there of fans getting upset at the weirdness of that twist, maybe. But maybe if we gave it like another good 10, 15 years, if Bond needs a kind of a shot in the arm at that point, it could be a fun way to sort of just reinvigorate some interest in the previous films, to sort of see this as they are all technically the same character, even though they're played by many different actors, because it's this one person going through this training regimen.
I mean, listen, the fans are always going to be upset about something. They're always going to have some sort of issue. But the nice thing about Bond is you could just choose to ignore that. Is you could just headcanon that very, very easily. It's hardly like the MCU here, where if a film came in and did something that sweeping to the whole canon, that it would be really, really disruptive, and you wouldn't be able to ignore it. But in this case, like if somebody didn't like that approach, they could easily just wipe that movie out of their mind and be like, cool, that's not my chronology, and the rest of it is all still real. So I think you could totally take that creative risk.
I think that might even open up the door in some respect if you wanted to go even crazier with it in that film or a subsequent film where you have some kind of plot conceit, whether that's as something as crazy as like a Into the Spider-Verse type crossover sort of thing, or whether it's just like hopping between various virtual reality simulations to kind of cross over some of those time periods and characters and whatnot. I think that'd be kind of like a Ready Player One sort of conceit of jumping through all of these different Bond eras in some way.
I think that's really fun, and they kind of not exactly this, but they approach something adjacent to this when they rebooted. I want to say it was when I think when they rebooted GoldenEye, the game for I think it was like the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 console generation. But they did a game where it was basically like the Daniel Craig Bond, but then you would play through some of the best missions from previous Bond eras with the conceit that it was like him doing flashbacks, remembering his like older missions, basically.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
So they were kind of like retroactively repainting those as and kind of updating them into a more modern world. So it was like, oh, those are some of his early exploits. So they've kind of approached it a little bit in that game narratively. So I don't think it's like super wild to sort of recontextualize the previous movies in this way.
Could be interesting. I think the soft reboot angle needs a little bit of rejiggering if we ever return to it. It's a much more like complicated, I think, unwieldy sort of a plot device that, you know, I like the central conceit, but definitely needs some fine tuning in terms of how it actually functions. I'm very sold right off the bat for the comedic angle. I think it's time.
It's a fun
and this has nothing to do with the fact that we haven't had a new Austin Powers film in almost 20 years now. Absolutely unrelated to that fact. I'm not at all checking my newsfeed daily for announcements about Austin Powers 4. To even suggest that is preposterous, and I'm frankly insulted.
In a world where we got Bill and Ted 3 and Dumb and Dumber 2 and Zoolander 2 and Anchorman 2, like how are we not getting Austin Powers 4? What is Mike Myers doing?
I ask myself that question every night before I go to bed and every morning when I wake up and stare into that cold hard mirror with no mercy at all for such a world that won't allow that to exist.
Mike, buddy, if you're listening, come on, make it happen.
I feel confident this is the first time it's ever been suggested to him. I think he just fell out of his seat going, why didn't I think of this yet? Austin Powers 4. Incredible. Genius.
All right. On that note, let's shift to our next pitch. Are you ready for me to boot up the algorithm and you ready to take one?
Hit me.
All right. Just going to hit the beep boop boop boop. Skibidi-bop-bop. It's a scat. Whoa. It's a scat algorithm now, actually.
Did we just buy that plugin, or did that come prepackaged?
Yeah, it's actually it's a $9.99 add-on for the algorithm. If for those of you that also have this algorithm, it's an in-app purchase.
Buddy, we gotta approve these in the budget meetings.
Super worth it though. Super worth it. That was clearly the highlight of the episode thus far. Was the scat plugin. Okay, so the algorithm has spit out that the Indiana Jones franchise has obviously been kind of stuck in second gear for a bit of time. They haven't quite figured out what they're doing with it. And so while they're trying to figure out what the next mainline installment is going to be, the algorithm is proposing that we take a stab at an anthology film in the Indiana Jones universe with the sort of added, stipulation that one of the main characters cannot be trusted. So what do you think?
Trusted. Well, clearly that's the Shia LaBeouf character. He's very shifty.
Okay, right off the bat, bringing back Shia LaBeouf. That's a brave move.
So I know well aware at this point not to doubt the algorithm. The algorithm is pure and perfect and has never led us astray. I will say that it was programmed before the news came out that the next Indiana Jones film would be Harrison Ford's last, and that they have no intention of Chris Pratting it or something with a new actor playing Indiana Jones. They're saying this is the last one where we get the titular character of Jones. So with that in mind, I think it's a little bit trickier because my initial instinct, I think the easy instinct when you say anthology for Indiana Jones, you do another like young Indiana Jones type thing. You put, old Harrison Ford in a chair and he's regaling us with tales of his past. And I think we could do something fun with, casting a bunch of younger up and coming actors as a different Indiana Jones in every story. That feels good to me. I love that. It feels right. But if apparently we can't have that because we can't have nice things. So here's what I would suggest in lieu of that. If no other actor can ever play Indiana Jones again, I'm going to suggest that we essentially frame this story, this anthology, so the series of stories, around the idea, a sort of meta narrative around the idea of us trying to find a successor for Indiana Jones. So from a meta standpoint, we're looking for someone who could carry the torch of that franchise without literally being Indiana Jones. And from a story standpoint, I'm going to set it in maybe some lore enthusiasts will say that this has already been done, but I haven't heard of it. Let's say like after the events of the last movie, Indiana Jones has gone into retirement and he's taken his fortune and prestige and founded, let's say, like the Indiana Jones Society or something.
Okay.
Like a modern day adventurers society that, if you want to have a cool kind of supernatural twist, especially with the direction that the fourth film went, I guess I don't know if that's supernatural, but in some sense supernatural, especially if the fifth film leans into that even more, kind of maybe with the intent of seeking out and protecting and otherwise kind of safeguarding relics of extreme power hidden throughout history around the world. So in this sort of society, I think the anthology book ending sequences, the connected sequences, will maybe be let's just say like how about like a series of conversations that a character is listening in on. Maybe the character that cannot be trusted. Maybe they're the central kind of POV for this. A series of conversations that members of the society are having, essentially talking about their previous adventures. So every time he sort of stumbles into one of these conversations, we get to see what that adventure was. It'll be like coming halfway into a conversation about those cursed Aztec ruins that they were exploring. Another one, the tomb of a Chinese emperor that they were exploring. And each one is sort of a globe-trotting adventure taking place in a unique location with a cool kind of cursed or paranormal object of some kind. And we sort of see each of these stories play out. And from our perspective, we're almost kind of auditioning like the next Jones, like going like, oh, which one of these actors or which one of these actresses feels like the coolest sort of lead for this archaeology adventure based story. The character that cannot be trusted is interesting because I'm gonna go out on a limb here and I'm gonna take a stab at something that might not be possible, given the recent quotes. But I'm just gonna say that the script is so inspiring that the studio and the actor makes a concession towards us. I'm gonna say the main character who cannot be trusted is actually Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones, who's maybe he doesn't really need to be in the movie that much, but he's incognito, sort of flitting around this party or gathering or whatever meeting kind of thing, and he's listening in on the conversations to get a sense of who these people are, because he's retiring from the Indiana Jones Society and he has to name his successor, and he has to figure out who among the membership is going to be the best one to step into his shoes of being the foremost kind of archaeologist adventurer in the world and potentially be entitled to all the knowledge that entails of what the organization's true purpose is and its enemies and whatever kind of extra meta narrative stuff you want to add on to that to create a franchise out of this. But I like the idea of us as well as Indiana Jones himself, kind of sort of through these tales that are being spun, auditioning who's the successor to the Indiana Jones organization, but also to the Indiana Jones franchise.
I like that a lot. It gives me Kingsman vibes a little bit in the sense that uh, if you imagined Kingsman as taking place in the Bond universe, it's almost got that vibe of like they're auditioning these new recruits to take their place as the next gentleman or gentlewoman spy. It's got a similar vibe to me of like we have a crop of really great adventurous kids, and then trying to figure out which one of them is going to like take up that mantle is really fun. And I think you could play with it in the same way that Kingsman plays with that sort of fun, irreverent tone. I think there's something really interesting there.
Yeah, I like the sort of idea of it's cheeky, but I like the sort of idea of bringing the audience into that journey. And I know fan culture being what it is, there's some risks and pitfalls that need to be avoided here. But essentially, putting something out there like this and seeing what the reaction is to each of these segments, seeing which one of these are feels right to the fans and to the viewers as the torchbearer for this series to be, who is it's America's next top Indiana Jones. And I think that there's something kind of fun about that. And the anthology aspect of it, I think, as well, let's just sort of experiment with just a broad range of different up and coming younger performers. Like I don't think it would be crazy to have a Timothy Chalamet segment, or like a Lana Condor segment, or like a Maisie Williams segment, like any number of kind of different up and coming people that you don't need to dedicate a whole film to at this point. You can just kind of see how they sit in that role and how people react to it. And it's almost like $100 million focus test, which it sounds bad, but I think there's something fun about that.
Can we get Adam Driver in there just for fun?
Sure, yeah, that could be great.
Put that guy in a cowboy hat and a bolo whip.
and on that note, like maybe you could experiment with the kind of iconography of Jones and seeing like what other kind of adventurers would look like. We have such a classic sort of image of the Indiana Jones adventurer. How else can you create an aesthetic around an adventuring archaeologist? Like what do those other aesthetics look like? And just play with each one for 20-25 minutes and see what that looks like to you.
That's so fun. That's a great concept. I'm super into that. I co-sign it. I sponsor it. I put it before Congress.
Cool. All right, one more for the night. Are you feeling still fresh, ready, excited?
I don't know, man. I think I chambered and shot my best one with that whimsical Bond one. That was great, but I'll do my best.
All right, we gotta box that up. We gotta put it on the shelf. We gotta let it age into something fine and beautiful. But right now we need to move on, and we need to figure out how to crack a Star Wars pitch that involves a story that's going to span 3 or more decades.
Oh,
Julian, it's a story about second chances. What does that mean to you?
Oh man. God.
Star Wars universe span at least 3 decades. Make it a story about second chances.
It has to span at least 3 decades, meaning it could span longer than that.
If you're like, this film takes place over the course of 20 million years, you go for it, buddy. Want a tree of life this? It's all yours.
Oh man. So I'm gravitating towards I don't have something like specific yet, so maybe I'll just kind of talk and find my way to it.
Yes. Yeah, let's just wander our way through.
So I'm kind of feeling like something like a lineage type thing where the protagonist is sort of confronting the burden of their this is somewhat tropey, but confronting the burden of a tainted legacy. And I'm thinking something in the vein of like an ancestor that broke with a long tradition of heroic pursuits or heroic members of this family and kind of fell, and this person's weighing this person is as the most recent or maybe a few generations removed, has to deal with the the tarnished family name and trying to is presented maybe with an interesting opportunity to recover it. And I'm thinking sort of in the vein of, Aragorn dealing with the Isildur being tempted and not destroying the One Ring, or I don't know, that kind of vibe where or like there was a person, I don't know if anyone ever played Assassin's Creed 3, but the protagonist's father betrayed the assassin order and became a Templar, and kind of from a long line of assassins ended up going kind of left of center. So like that kind of vibe where we got someone who's dealing with the fact that a very recent ancestor of theirs, I guess it's Star Wars. So the easy in here is like that they fell to the dark side, and tarnished this really wonderful family name. Oh man, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it'd be kind of interesting to turn this into a Count Dooku origin movie, because he's a nobleman from the planet Sereno, and it would be kind of interesting to not rewrite, but kind of expand on his backstory and have it be like he was the one that got seduced by the dark side. And that's kind of interesting. Although I guess you lose, he didn't have any offspring unless we write that in, but so maybe not that direction.
Do we know that for sure?
We don't know that for sure. So
I mean,
technically we could plug that
Palpatine
into...
had a baby.
Yeah, that's very true. It's like
Anything's possible at this point.
I guess, and we know that he ruled Sereno as Count, even after he became Darth Tyrannus. So I think you could. I guess you could just write that in, and we could have we could pick up maybe in the post Rise of Skywalker timeline with a descendant of Count Dooku, and rediscovering his family lineage of these noble counts, and people who were, I guess they don't have to be Jedi, but it would be interesting if some of them were Jedi, or like they all did very heroic or big things leading up to Dooku, who was seduced and ultimately unceremoniously offed by Anakin Skywalker. So it'd be kind of cool to play with the complicated emotions of that protagonist, who's both doesn't really respect and doesn't really have any sort of love for Count Dooku as his ancestor, but also maybe has a bone to pick with anyone with the Skywalker name because they were responsible for the death of his grandfather, or whatever he is to that character. So that's kind of fun. There's some complicated emotions there, some murky territory that's always fun to mine. I don't know. What do you think?
It's interesting. I think what I'm gravitating towards is recontextualizing not necessarily a specific moment, but a concept from Star Wars history that we're very familiar with, and playing out the ramifications of that, right? So you take like a very iconic character like Dooku, who did the things that we saw on screen. What does that look like after that? You pointed out like Dooku was essentially like a political leader as well. So if he went off and got himself killed, and what does that look like for the subsequent 10, 15, 30 years, right? Like, what does that mean? How does that play out? And, Star Wars being at its heart sort of stories of families, there's something really interesting there in terms of playing with what the lineage of that looks like, carrying that legacy. I think what's intriguing to me as a potential alternate direction is that with the Dooku story in particular, I think it's lacking a little bit of oomph for me, because even though Count Dooku died, his side still won, so to speak, right? Because the Empire comes to power. So I think there might be something interesting to play with, a different shifting of the guard in some sense, of like someone with an Imperial legacy living through the Republic era, someone with the Republic legacy living through the Imperial era, and playing out that very awkward, difficult position of carrying a legacy that's not even no longer relevant in that time period, but openly hostile to that time period, and what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of fun. Then you could then we're sort of exploring a little bit of that the Bill Burr character in The Mandalorian, where he's he's an Imperial, but is finding his way in the New Republic, and confronting sort of his past a little bit. That's kind of interesting. I like the idea of it being post. I mean, I guess there's room to explore the Imperial era still a little bit, but that feels like it's been tread more than anything post Rise of or I'm sorry, post Return of the Jedi. Like that period of time between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens is still so unexplored. So I feel like there's a little bit more leeway there in terms of
I
finding your
think
way through that.
there's something really interesting with sort of the Rogue One angle of, again, stories of families and whatnot, of living with the legacy of your predecessors, right? With the Jyn Erso character essentially having to shoulder the burden of the fact that her father created the Death Star, which is, such a monstrous act. He obviously he put in the secret weakness in it, but still, like the fact that he created something that killed billions, if not trillions, of people.
Sure.
Right? Like that's an incredible legacy to live with and to feel responsible for, and to have to in some way maybe make amends for. I think there could be something interesting there in terms of that angle of, if we take an iconic Star Wars concept and then play out the ramifications of that. Like there's a recent game, Star Wars Squadrons, and they didn't go very far into this, but I liked the sort of the seeds that they were planting of, one of the pilots on the rebel side is from the Sinar family, who are the inventors of the TIE fighter. So it's kind of like an interesting sort of dynamic there of, your family is essentially responsible for arming the Empire with one of its most iconic weapons, that is the instrument of death and destruction across the galaxy. Like, how do you live and cope with that legacy if you disagree with it?
Mm.
Could I throw a potential Clone Wars angle at you?
Oh yeah, always.
I think what's interesting to me is the obviously we've seen explored a lot the clone troopers sort of story of having that organic chip in their brain, right, which allowed the Palpatine's order to go out of killing all the Jedi. So we've played with that, and I think that's very interesting, of seeing their response to that and their reaction to that. And I think we're going to see more stories in that vein, of the fact that they fought alongside the Jedi for years, and then they were essentially forced to turn on them because of an element of their programming, and living with the guilt and the shame of that, right, to some extent, is a very interesting story. What if we took a step back from that and essentially centered a story around a new character who is the one who was actually responsible for developing and implementing that chip that allowed those orders to go out.
Ooh.
Who essentially was the originator for whatever that piece of technology is that can direct people to take actions against their better interests. And maybe there's some noble root in that, in all kind of weapons making and whatnot, of the original noble intent maybe had something a little bit more lofty to it. Like it was necessary for the clones to have that, to be able to fight against the droids, right? To have the coordination necessary to do that, or something to that extent. Like it felt like a necessary evil at the time. And to have to live through seeing it play out on the most monstrous way possible, of Palpatine using that technology to massacre an organization of peacekeepers, like to have to see that and live with that, I think is an incredible legacy to bear. Let me pitch you a specific angle in there, because I think I'm finding something with the third sort of 30-year angle.
Okay, go. Yeah.
Because what is 30 years is essentially birth to I guess full adulthood for a human, right? What if we were to take this character, maybe he's a Camino, and I don't know what their lifespans are. I'm sure it's on Wikipedia. We'll look it up later and figure out how wrong this pitch is. But let's say maybe it's a Camino and who developed this chip, and having watched it played out, they were able to save like a young Jedi Padawan, like maybe even a youngling who was not at the temple at the time.
Ooh.
And the film plays out over 3 decades of them raising and doing their best to protect this child on like a remote planet. So like a Yoda story, like on a Dagobah sort of thing. But it's the story of this parent and child as they grow up, and the parent kind of holding this this deep dark secret of the fact that they're essentially directly responsible for that child's orphanage, right? That they're orphans because of these decisions they made, as part of their job, or as part of what they felt like was the right decision at the time. and how that what does that look like in terms of a parent-child dynamic, especially as secrets are revealed and as consequences play out and elements from the past resurface. I think that could be an interesting dynamic there, just seeing what that looks like. Can you make amends by saving one person, right? Even though you caused the death of thousands.
Okay. Let me dig into that even further. So
Okay.
so it's sort of a boyhood angle where it's like distinct periods of time in terms of your sort of 3 decade thing, and you kind of play it out like that. So we're gonna have three different actors who are gonna play the Jedi youngling as a young age, at a, let's say, teenage age, and then more as an adult. And I feel like the second bit would be where it's it's a little contrived, but I think it would be make for some good drama, that the Kaminoan has not revealed to the youngling that he was the person who came up with that chip, and so that would be revealed in a very tense, dramatic way in that second bit, perfectly timed with that youngling being a teenager. And maybe you have some sort of explosive force outburst or something very, very dramatic that happens between the two of them, and that creates a schism. And that the third chapter would be that person as an adult, kind of finding their way alone through the galaxy, and then they're reunited some way, and they're able to kind of come back together and make peace and reconnect with each other. That's really fun.
Sure. Yeah, you could go all the way with that sort of indie Sundance angle of, it's not even like a grand, epic, sweeping story. It's really just a story of some level of reconciliation with between a parent and a child. The in the context of Star Wars, in the sort of frame of Star Wars, still just a story about the fact that no parent is perfect, and that part of growing up is realizing how imperfect your parents are. I think there's something kind of cutesy and fun about that angle. That definitely a little bit outside of the bounds of what a Star Wars story typically is, but I think it feels fresh and new and interesting.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's really, really fun. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that one feels solid. So I think we lock it in and we say that's the A pitch. Can I give you a B pitch, which is just in the back pocket for us, on our way out the door, to be like, hey, one more thing, Kathleen Kennedy.
Shoot.
How about this? How does this strike you? All right. If you had to look at the vast swath of Star Wars lore and history, thousands of years of grand storytelling and epic battles, who is the one character in there who never really got their due? I know what you're thinking. It's Max Rebo, our beloved piano-playing elephant from Jabba's throne room. Here's what I'm going to pitch to you: an alternate take, a reconfiguring of Return of the Jedi, a kind of a look back and sort of a way to recontextualize some of those key moments from that film. We all know one of the most iconic changes they made to Return of the Jedi was the musical segment Jedi Rocks, right?
Okay.
In which Max Rebo's band plays what can only be described as an abomination of cinema, to the detriment of one of the greatest science fiction films of all time. What if in that universe, everyone also hated Jedi Rocks? We play out that sequence, and then we play out the next 5 minutes that we didn't see on screen, and everyone's just talking shit about Max Rebo's band and how that was the song that he's been preparing for like the past 6 months to debut in front of Jabba, and Jabba hates it. Bib hates it. That weird monkey thing that laughs when Jabba says things hates it. Every single character in the throne room actually hated it, and Max Rebo's reputation is ruined because he's responsible for Jedi Rocks. And to sort of make up for it, to try and make one last ditch effort at staying in Jabba's good graces and being the house band and whatever, he was going to perform on Jabba's barge at the execution of Luke Skywalker, which, as we know, did not go as planned. And let's say during the course of that event, before he even got a chance to perform, the barge exploded and his entire band is killed, and he's the only survivor. And the next 30 years are spent Max Rebo trying to rekindle his creative spark and figure out a way to deliver to the galaxy the greatest song that anyone has ever heard. And it's his 30-year journey to try and figure out what it means to have been reduced to nothing, to be a musician again, and maybe realizing that his life with Jabba was, it was going corporate. It was him losing that creative spark that made him such a genius musical storyteller to begin with. He fell into old habits and he couldn't break out of them, and he just started making trash and repeating his old greatest hits. And now this is a chance for him to reinvent himself, and it's a road trip esque movie across decades of Star Wars history as he goes on this musical quest for inspiration and figuring out what it means to be a musician in the Star Wars universe.
You know what this means, right? The timeline almost perfectly lines up, I think, with, I mean, not perfectly, but at least a portion of it, I think, would line up nicely with the Book of Boba Fett.
It's the perfect tie-in.
You just have a little episode where they cross over in the Book of Boba Fett, and it ties into some adventure he has in the movie. It's perfect.
This is what it's all been leading to.
Man, Max Rebo. It's there's an amazing opportunity in there for Lin-Manuel Miranda to come in and also do the soundtrack.
Oh my God! What if he just voiced Max Rebo? He never talked. We don't know what he sounds like.
Oh my God! Oh, Kathy.
Phone. Let's get this done.
He's in the Disney pockets. We could
Absolutely.
That's a hop, skip, and a jump away. Man,
all right. So maybe 3.5, 4 good pitches, I think, tonight that I'm fairly pleased with. I think it's at least one good pitch for each of the prompts.
Sure.
I'm feeling pretty confident in that. Some of them may be more A than B, or some a little bit more on the A side and some a little more on the B side. But I think either way, I'd feel comfortable stepping into a room with some or all of these.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, we're going to head into our last segment of the show, which is a log line sent in by one of our listeners. And if you'd like to add a contribution to what we call our high concept deck and potentially have that randomly generated during a show and have us pitch and riff on that, you can contact us on any of our social media profiles at Let's Write Pod or on our website, and we'll add it to that deck, and your idea might be the one we pitch on a future episode. All right, you ready for this one, Julian?
Let's do it.
All right, could you get us started on a pitch based on this logline? A thief gains access to a bottomless bank account.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
Wow, that's a sparse logline. A thief gains access to a bottomless bank account. Okay. What if the thief is using their newfound wealth in a sort of twist of the traditional career trajectory? They're going to do break-ins and such in order. I guess this is basic. Let's go with the Robin Hood angle. Basically, like they are using their criminal skills for good, and I'm kind of leaning towards like an Ocean's 13 sort of lane where it's like there's a clear antagonist and someone who is doing bad things and is a bad person, and the people who are the thief, who you would normally say is on the wrong side of the law, is actually using that skill set as well as their wealth in order to make things right and set the world right and prevent this bad guy from being a bad person to bad people, to other good people. That's kind of where it's a little vague, but that's generally where I'm leaning. I like the idea of doing something where where it's thievery for a good cause, and they're using this fortune in a Bruce Wayne style way, using their limitless fortune in order to do good in the world, but using a skill set that's perhaps less than what's the word I'm looking for? Savory.
Did you just pitch that this is an entry in the Limitless cinematic universe?
Whoa. Could it be? Could we bring back Bradley Cooper? Could he be the thief?
Okay, I'm not going to go on that specific angle, but you bringing that up makes me think of the feel of Limitless. The concept, right? In that film, he finds a pill that makes him hyper intelligent, and we see how that plays out for both positive and negative. It's interesting to me, the idea of like, if you took a thief, someone who is stealing things and stumbles their way into, what is can only be described as the greatest score of all time, a bank account with like unlimited funds somehow, whatever the conceit is. You now have access to whatever that very specific resource can get you, right? Because it's not unlimited, right? It's an unlimited amount of money, but that has to be applied in ways that money can be applied. And then on the opposite end of that, on the antagonistic end of that, whose bank account is that, right? Who did he steal from? And if that person had an unlimited supply of funding from whatever the reason is, they're probably already immensely powerful and also immensely strategic about how to leverage that for their own gain. So if you took that, that is like an extraordinarily scary antagonist, and kind of in a limitless scope, like the version of that movie where that gangster essentially gets access to that limitless drug, and they have to go head to head with each other. It's like I almost see this almost like an origin story, like almost like a superpower or superhero kind of learning their how to use their powers for the first time, in the sense of this thief is essentially has to figure out how to survive and escape this maybe like the most powerful man in the world, using this newfound power that they have, which is they have a credit card which can be used anywhere for anything in any amount. Like that's kind of interesting. I can see that play out in so many different fun little set piece ways. I'm just like, can you figure out like the most creative way to spend money in the moment to not die?
Ooh. Yeah, this is good. This is really compelling. I like this a lot. Trying to think who I would cast in this. Tonally, I feel like I'd want it to be maybe a little bit slightly more whimsical than Limitless. I feel like Limitless was more drama, like played more as a drama, but had elements of it that felt like this sort of more lively, sort of colorful film, and I think I'd want to lean more into that energy a little bit. Like the epilogue of Limitless feels, I guess epilogue, the kind of ending of it feels more like tonally what I would want, what I wished more the movie had been, and what I would hope this movie would be a little bit more like. Like I love that concept of the of the way he's sort of like in command of his in his thing, and you're like, oh, okay, this is now where things get fun. You know what I mean?
Can I throw you a potential wild take?
Sure.
And I'm probably going to immediately regret it the moment I say it. But what if you took a Jason Sudeikis and played against that comedic type a little bit, where it's still dramatic, but you get that sort of legacy of like, this is a comedian. And so you sort of get to play with the fact that they grow into maybe a more dramatic or a more confident version of themselves, because you're so used to seeing the more whimsical side of them.
He can do it. I don't know if you saw the movie Colossal, but he plays against type pretty effectively there. So I think that's a great choice, and I love me some Sudeikis. Who would you want to do who would you want the filmmaker to be?
Big question. Because I think we're looking for something fresh here, because it the same way Limitless, it has a very strong central conceit, but it's not a very visual conceit, right? Like thinking very hard is not something that translates to a visual concept, very one-to-one. So you have to sort of think of a way to visualize that in a way that's interesting and exciting. I think we're in a very similar boat in that, like, taking out your credit card and buying something is not that like visually exciting. So I think we're looking for someone with a little bit of a flair and some stylistic chops to find creative ways to constantly make that energetic and exciting throughout the course of 2 hours of watching someone buy stuff.
Okay, I have two pitches for you. Edgar Wright or Ryan Johnson.
Love both of those.
So
I think, Edgar Wright, especially with Baby Driver, I think that's the sort of tonal line that we want to be towing, of like it's comedic, it's funny, it's jaunty, but it also gets serious. It has stakes. It feels emotional. There is an emotional core to it that everything orbits. I think that's a really great tonal touch point.
Yeah, I feel like
And
he would
I
kill it.
frankly like Knives Out as well with Ryan Johnson, like the same way, like extremely light, extremely breezy, very fun, a lot of comedy, but also like it centers around a very like serious and specific premise, and when it leverages that to get you invested in the emotional component, it totally works.
Yeah, I like both of those choices a lot. If you want it to get real weird and super meta, if we're sticking with the Sudeikis starring, then you do have Olivia Wilde be the director,
Okay, yeah, I like that.
which adds an extra layer because they're apparently no longer together. So there's that.
Okay, that's bad. Don't pitch that.
There's that added component.
Okay, that I don't know if that works anymore, but thank you for bringing that to our attention.
So we had
All right, I'm gonna
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
because you mentioned Ryan Johnson and you mentioned Edgar Wright, who are I think Edgar Wright especially, but Ryan Johnson not that extremely far behind. Like wonderful stylists and some incredible imaginative visual flair. I nothing against Jason Sudeikis. I think he's a phenomenal comedian, and he works as that kind. He has a very specific type that works in a lot of different comedies, but I don't know if that's wild enough for me. If we're gonna go for an Edgar Wright or something like that, what if we swapped in a different Jason and we went Jason Mantzoukas
Oh, please.
playing like as this kind of thief role? Like I would imagine he is like one step above a street hustler. Like this is the most accidental score of all time. Like the worst series of contrivances lucked him into this, and he is completely unprepared to deal with the ramifications of this. And we get to see him morph from Jason Mantzoukas into capable Jason Mantzoukas. And I think that's a fun transformation.
Oh my God, please, please, I'm begging you, please, let's do this. That is, I just put Jason Mantzoukas in everything, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm okay with that.
And maybe as the antagonist, if we're just going maximum chaotic energy, can we throw Pete Davidson in there?
Oh, please. Absolutely. Pete Davidson playing the most powerful man in the world.
Can you imagine?
I like that.
Just
I love that.
Just let him do whatever he's going to do with it. Don't give him any notes. Just let him do literally whatever he wants with that role.
Like I just want to imagine this sort of reveal of that, this sort of the first appearance of that nemesis, in the sense of you setting this up as this is literally the most powerful man in the world that no one has ever heard of. Like this guy could buy Elon Musk over 10 times, like he's pulling the strings of everything in the entire world, and out comes 27-year-old Pete Davidson. Like that to me is it's such a like an image shattering concept that there's so much creative energy that flows out of that reveal, so much comedic energy that flows out of that reveal. I love that concept so much.
It's like perfect though, because that's like if you were gonna have like a Zuckerbergian type, insanely rich, powerful person like that. That's the energy that we're looking for. It reminds me a little bit of that episode of Black Mirror with Topher Grace playing the sort of tech billionaire CEO of that company, and he's like just a hippy dippy. Does it like it's that kind of. You're like, this is not what I was expecting, and I think it would be so fun.
I would suggest in that casting, if we were to go down that route, we take it a step further and we set up a secondary antagonist that takes us through the first act and a half of the film that everyone is going to assume is the main antagonist, and then gets killed off wildly, unexpectedly, so that the true antagonist can step in. I think we cast like a Dwayne Johnson or an Army Hammer, or like a big imposing Jason Momoa sort of actor who's just like, yeah, that's the scariest man alive. That guy's gonna fuck you up. Or like a Josh Brolin, just with that seething energy of like, yeah, that's the most powerful man in the world. And then like it turns out he's like the number two. He's the assistant to the true villain of the film.
Oh my God, let's get like Denzel Washington in there and have him be the number two to Pete Davidson.
Yes, because you would just immediately assume like, yep, that's the guy. That's the one. That's obviously the villain.
Oh my God, I love that so much. That would be such a fun mid-movie reveal.
And I'm just really vibing with that limitless. I'm so glad you said that because I think that kicked this whole energy off of. I'm really vibing with that limitless idea of like you take a very simple superpower sort of thing, like of like intelligence or money, and then you extend it to the limits of that universe, and you just see how that plays out. I'm just going like your superpower is money. You can buy anything that you can imagine. You know, you have a literal like credit card with no limit on it. You can buy anything in the moment. How do you use that to solve problems? You know, like how do you use that to escape like these action scenario set pieces? Like how do you use that to survive against people trying to kill you? Like what does the magic credit card do in that scene? Like that to me is it's feels super creative and super interesting and just a fun rompy premise.
Oh man, that's really that. Okay, if we were gonna go slightly, what's the word I'm looking for? Like we were gonna lean a little bit more into the fantastical in that realm. I'm not saying we have to go this angle, but I'm just sort of like taking it to its maximum. You could do a sort of zanier version of the credit card unlimited wealth angle, where it's a credit card that comes not only with unlimited wealth, but it's tied to a courier service, a la like an Uber Eats or something, or a Postmates or a TaskRabbit. But they
Mm.
are. It's this sort of. Oh, actually, shit. Okay, this is kind of fun. Let me just follow this through. This is going to be trash, and we'll throw it right in the trash can, light it on fire. But I just can't get out of my head. So let me just go down this rabbit hole, and then we'll somehow pull me back out. It's the credit card is a special. It's a special. It's like the black card. You know, it's that kind of
Uh-huh.
interesting. It's like platinum. It's just a weird thing, and it comes tied to this courier service that no one's ever heard of, and I don't know. It's called like jackalope or something. I don't know. It's just something bizarre, like something really enigmatic and evocative, and it's we world build in the way that they world built the whole vibe of the Continental and John Wick, where it's a underground network of couriers that whoever holds this card, whatever you need, they'll get it to you within like 8 hours, 4 hour, 1 hour, whatever. Like there's just this absurd, like there's no possible way you could get me this thing in this time limit, and a courier shows up in a bizarre car or on a horse or just something just wacko, and they've got the thing that you need. And so then that thing you were saying about like how does the credit card get him out of these scenarios? It's like how does he his imagination is sort of the limit. It's like how does he plan these courier drop off and these payload deliveries essentially with this card and this access to this insane network of Uber drivers, but that are like hyper efficient. That's me galaxy braining the hell out of this concept, but there's something really fun
There's
there.
something really fun in that concept of tying it into the gig economy of like this is something that feels very relevant and timely and that we're thinking about in intellectual and important ways, but also like how can we channel some of those anxieties and emotions into something that's a little bit lighter and lets us play with that idea of like the ultimate gig economy app of you can just pay for anything, you know, like for whatever you want. It's like a task rabbit but without set tasks. It's just like whatever you can figure out with these gig people, like you can get them to do. Like he's like has to escape these assassins that are coming after him, and he has to blend into a crowd. So he orders a flash mob. You know, like he gets a guy on the app to organize a flash mob for him and disappears into that. You know, like I think that could be a really fun way to tie it into something that feels a little bit more real. Of he's gotten an unlimited account essentially with this service that it's the ultimate Uber. It's Uber for everything.
Oh man. Okay. Let's go even further. So if your initial premise, if I remember correctly, was him kind of stealing somebody's membership, or coming into ownership of this thing that wasn't his, but maybe belonged to somebody, and whose did he steal? Yeah. What if this is you and I have conversations all the time about the uber elite, hyper wealthy of the world, and that they must live on a different plane of reality than the rest of us. And so like this is a service, and I'm going to change the name. It's not Jackalope. It's called Hermes. So the service is called Hermes, and it's got a very cool sort of Greek symbol on the card, and there's a central office, and it's very like I'm already seeing the architectural design, and it's just very cool and well designed. And this courier service is available to like the tiniest, like the 1% of the 1% of the wealthiest people in the world, and that this Manzuka's character would accidentally stumble into. Oh my God! What if he pickpockets like a Elon Musk?
Yes.
On the street.
He's just a pickpocket.
Oh my God!
He pickpockets the guy's card,
and he gets the card, and with it access to the whole. Oh my God! I love it so much, and because then if we're going like, I don't want to be that pretentious guy that I was a couple seasons ago on the show, where I'm like, and the themes, but if we're talking about like the thematics of it, and you're mentioning the gig economy and mining that because it's top of mind relevant, it's so perfect to balance that with the hyper elite and the people who have essentially broken capitalism, and these uber wealthy Elon Musks and Jeff Bezos, and how they've the contrast between and the commentary on sort of the three different sides of the economic triangle, so to speak, the street hustler making ends meet, the gig economy workers, and the uber wealthy, and having this interesting triangle dynamic playing out between them, but in a heightened, fantastical way. Oh my God, I'm so into this concept.
I think there's something really fun in there. Just going like, if your superpower was that you're just one of these uber elite rich people, like that, it's an entirely different existence, and then to play up that fantastical angle of like, then this is how they live, this is how they get things done, this is how they maintain their power or whatnot. I think there's something really fun and quirky in there of some light satire and finding a fun Limitless-esque adventure story alongside that.
God, that is enjoyable. That's a great script if you can crack that.
And we could.
Yeah, I think I'm really tantalized by that. I feel like that's going to have to become a project later. Man, what a good.
This isn't the title, but our internal working title is Credit Limitless.
That's so good. It's so obvious, but it's so good. Oh man, what a note to end it on. Man, that's a great one. Oh man, just want to say thanks to everyone who tuned in and listened. I hope you guys had as much fun with this one as we did, because that was what a romp from where we started with that pitch to where we ended. That was wow. That was a good one. But yeah, thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Let's Write podcast. Welcome to our the 2021 edition, new year. Some exciting things planned, as Ryan mentioned, and of course, if you are new to the podcast, or you just kind of want to catch up and get acquainted with some of the other stuff we've done, you can visit our website, letswritepod.com. You'll find old episodes. We've done movie posters for some of the concepts we've pitched. We've done treatments. We've done full scripts. We have 3 years of nano projects that you can go check out. A lot of good stuff there. So definitely give our website a look. And you can also reach us on social at Let's Write Pod on all social platforms. And feel free to hit us up with fun ideas. Like if you want to be, if you have a fun log line and you want to be featured in that sort of final segment of these pitch episodes, definitely shoot something our way, and let us know what you think if you check out our Nano 2020 screenplays. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you in the next episode.